Well, if only South Africa's Bafana Bafana could score as many goals as the government of South Africa, the country of South Africa, scores own goals, particularly recently. Despite warnings from global ratings agencies about the dire consequences of a cabinet reshuffle, we still had a reshuffle. Now, S&P's latest warning is that it could cut the rating of South Africa's creditworthiness even deeper to junk if the government continues to meddle with the critical independence of the Reserve Bank. This is the Moneymakers. I'm Bruce Whitfield, and I'm joined by Gardner Rusike, who is a sovereign analyst at S&P Global, and Khulekani Mathe, head of financial inclusion at the Banking Association of South Africa. Before we bring the evil ratings agencies into the picture, Khulekani, let's just paint a picture of a public protector who is gunning for one of your members, for Barclays Africa, for ABSA, on a deal that the public protector argues was illegally done more than 2 decades ago, and that's in terms of the ABSA lifeboat and Bancorp, all very complicated. But critically into her assessment, she inserts a clause saying we need to change the mandate of the Reserve Bank. It needs to serve the people, not worry about this boring thing called price stability. My words, not hers, but that's my reading of what she said. And it's caused quite a lot of concern, I would imagine, amongst your members and, of course, in the Reserve Bank too.
Yeah, thank you, Bruce. Indeed, it does cause a lot of concern because, firstly, we do not understand where this recommendation comes from. It was not part of the complaint that was laid with the public protector, and certainly the nature of the recommendation itself does not fall within her powers. The
implication, therefore, is she's being used by an outside party?
I don't think so. I explain this to colleagues and others and say that, look, if you're driving on a very busy highway and you blink, or even worse, you have some sort of a blurred vision, you can easily find yourself on somebody else's lane, and that can cause accidents. That's what I think is happening here.
That's a very generous interpretation. This looks malicious and deliberate. You don't see it as malicious?
I don't see it as malicious, but I do think that where this recommendation of the public protector to go unchallenged, of course it will have serious consequences for the Reserve Bank, for the banking sector, for the country as a whole. And so I think the Reserve Bank is right to say that they will take this recommendation on review.
I don't think the ANC has also spoken out against it. The finance minister in London has also gone, hold on a second, don't mess with the independence of the Reserve Bank. So everybody's making the right noises. But Gardner Rusike, this is where you come in, because no matter where it comes from, this is a senior figure within the South African government. She may be head of a Chapter 9 institution, but still somebody to whom certainly people listen to the office, if not the individual of the public protector, and a very respected office it is, at least over the last 7 years or so. How concerned are you when somebody in that sort of position goes way beyond their mandate and starts pontificating about changing mandates?
Well, thank you, Bruce. I think that would be a new risk on already existing risks. So how
is it a risk, though, when somebody, I mean, if I stood up and said it, nobody would pay any attention. She happens to be the public protector, but it's not in her mandate. Why is it a risk if she says it versus if I say it?
It starts, I think, a wrong debate. It starts a new narrative that gets debated. So you have a lot of, I think, negative issues that get discussed, which is not supposed to be the case. I think there are a number of key areas that can be focused, particularly the economy. So it's important to have a debate more broadly about the economy rather than the new issues about the central bank mandate. I think when we mention in our rating reports that in our rating construction, monetary flexibility is a strength. If you look at all the other factors, they are either neutral or a weakness. So if you start to have a discussion on weakening something that is already strong, then the outlook for the ratings becomes weaker.
But again, it depends on where it comes from. If the finance minister had made this recommendation, I get your concern.
Yes.
But and the public protector is not a nobody, but she is a nobody in this particular instance. She doesn't matter in this particular instance. The fact that she puts it into the public domain and gets shot down by the finance minister, by the head of the Reserve Bank, by the ANC itself, surely is a double tick for positive, because it is the integrity of the system holding.
Well, you can't create a problem and make it a positive when you solve it. So the first point is the
doesn't
problem must not be
exist.
created.
But the problem doesn't exist technically.
It's a discourse that's been started, right? So the discourse is unnecessary and shouldn't be there.
Fair enough.
Right? So it's important at least not to have the discourse, or at least when the discourse is there, is you now allow processes of the courts, of the reviews that they take place. I think realistically speaking, it's less likely that you'd see this being moved or being implemented, whether in the near term or in the future. Because it has to pass the test of the constitution, it has to pass the test of the courts, and then even if it goes to parliament, you still need that majority in the ANC, and you need agreement. So already you are getting a sense that there isn't an agreement.
But why go down the path in the first place? Is your argument? Khulekani,
exactly.
If we had a member of the ANC here, they would say, but the ANC is an open and robust organisation where we openly discuss and debate issues. There is a school of thought within the ANC that is populist. There's a very strong movement within the ANC that says everybody should have their personal key to the National Treasury. That was the subtext of Des van Rooyen's appointment, that the National Treasury should be accessible. Now, why Gardner's worried is because that particular narrative is allowed to fester. It's not being shut down sufficiently aggressively enough, certainly not from the upper tier of government.
So, I mean, I hope that if you do get a chance to interview Gardner Rusike, you can ask him this question as to, is it enough simply to say what the ANC has said, or whether more should be done? Let me tell you what concerns us. What concerns us, of course, is that the Constitutional Court earlier this year confirmed the powers of the public protector, as well as the fact that her recommendations or remedial actions are binding until set aside by the court. So as things stand, the recommendations that she has made are binding. All of the people and institutions that are cited in the recommendation are bound to implement that recommendation. So what that does is that actually...
Hold on a second, but a previous public protector's report said the Chief Justice should appoint a commission of inquiry. I mean, again, we can't be choosing which parts of the public protector's rulings we want to implement and those that we don't want to implement. And that's another concern, Gardner,
let's put it this
is we start getting choosy and picky.
Yeah. I think the struggle that South Africa is going through is there's a political discourse which is sometimes separate from the reality of government policy. In the political discourse, there is the talk about radical economic transformation, while government is pursuing inclusive growth. In the political discourse, there is talk about land expropriation without compensation, whilst in Parliament there is a bill that looks at fair and equitable and just compensation. Now you're probably going to have a discourse that reviews the role of the central bank, while in actual fact, in practice, the mandate and the role of the central banks are not going to change.
As a South African, you learn to live with the noise. I mean, otherwise you'd carry around a pack of razor blades and you have access to a nice hot, warm bath on a daily basis just in case you want to slit your wrist, because it does get very noisy. Here's a conspiracy theory for you, Khulekani. The public protector's cause is creating deliberate diversions from something infinitely more serious, and that is the mining charter.
I don't think that office exists to create a diversion.
We know what it exists to do, but
unfortunately, the effect of this report has indeed been a diversion from some of the critical issues facing the country, because, as I have said earlier, that we do not understand how she gets involved in matters of legislation and matters of policy, which are clearly the competence of Parliament and government respectively. So yes, to that extent it does create a diversion, and we would hope that in our statement we call upon and urge Parliament to make sure that it ensures that the independence of the Reserve Bank is indeed protected, because to start to have that discussion, it just diverts
It's a nonsensical discussion, and I don't want to focus on it anymore. I want to focus on the big issues. The big issues are that we are in recession. The big issue is that we're one notch away from sub-investment grade across all of the ratings agencies on both our local and foreign denominated debt. Malusi Gigaba, the finance minister, has been to London to try and pick up where Pravin Gordhan left off, but good luck to him, they're not going to trust him. We've got a massive trust deficit in the finance minister. The Gupta emails are going to, he says, ignore my past, or ignore the noise, let me judge me on my acts. Fair enough. but there is going to be that trust deficit. And of course now we've got the mining charter. We love tap dancing on the very edge of self-destruction, Gardner Rusike. What happens if we continue doing it?
Yeah, let's put it this way. I think the external environment, the global environment has been supportive for South Africa. Now we have seen actually good news on the current account deficit. Yeah. It's now much smaller. So the external position, the rand has been strengthening.
Yeah.
What is taking South Africa back are the domestic issues. And these are the examples that we've been mentioning, is the political risk that we've always said they're elevated, and this will impact on the economic outlook, it will impact on the fiscal picture. And already we are now in a recession. So the next thing is to see to what extent that does the fiscal position hold in a weaker growth environment. So it's very important to get leadership that can help to turn around the economic situation and improve on the fiscal position as well.
When Prime Minister Gordon delivered his budget speech in February, he was projecting 2% growth. Now, even the biggest optimists in the country aren't getting to 1% growth. That translates to a 40 billion rand shortfall in the budget. How do we maintain fiscal certainty in an environment where we're going to find it harder to borrow? You're already squeezing taxpayers hard. You don't want to raise VAT. You don't want to make the hard choices. And if we don't make those hard choices, the consequence, Gardner, is going to be, by December, flatline.
But that's important for South Africa to know and to make the right decisions. So that's why we've been raising the issues that if the economy is weak, then there will be a risk to the fiscal position. So it depends what adjustments the finance minister makes, whether it is in the October medium-term review or come into February next year. So it's very important that they keep on that path, as well as to turn around the economic story.
I mean, Khulekani, the most frustrating thing as a South African, and I'm sure you feel it too, is that the issues that Gardner raises are all issues that can be solved through the application of common sense, through the application of a cohesive and well-orchestrated approach to economic policy, and to say to the public protector, not your job, but out. In the same way as Thabo Mbeki had many flaws, but he made absolutely certain that there were only a handful of people who spoke about money. Tito Mboweni could speak about interest rates, and Trevor Mandu could speak about economic policy. And that was it.
Yeah. So look, I think that we have been let down by the noises that come out of the political arena, where senior leaders in cabinet are allowed to say things about economic policy and so on that are really, really devastating to the economy. I think what we need is really for the ruling party to start to take charge of the situation so that we can implement what we know needs to be done in order to get us out of trouble. We need to work together, but we keep on scoring these own goals that you were talking about. When we work together, when business comes to the party and says, okay, let's try and work to solve this problem, as we know now, the events that led to the reshuffle were in the middle of an international roadshow. The Minister of Finance is called back. So we have been let down by the developments on the political front. We need the ruling party to start to take charge in order for us to come out of this. And of course, we need other parties, the business sector in particular.
Critically, absolutely. Gardner Rusike, he's the sovereign analyst at S&P Global. And Khulekani Mathe, thank you very much. He's the head of financial inclusion at the Banking Association of South Africa. Tough days indeed, but on the upside, if we can find a silver lining to a dark cloud, this is the South Africa that we live in. And this is the South Africa that can be fixed, but it does need some decent leadership to do so. My thanks to these gentlemen for sharing some time with us this evening, and my thanks to you for watching. Till next time, bye-bye.